Greetings students, and would like to welcome you to the next lab, which this will be the 6th lab. Now I notice, right? Today we will focus on continuing using EMR, and we'll be doing some other PySpark work that can allow us to explore and also understand the function of Spark, and also be familiar with using Spark data frame and also working with data on HDFS. So this can be seen as an extension of your Lab6, and it will also give you more examples how the usage of PySpark and EMR should work. So as you see, this is the AWS management console, and what you will normally see is perhaps the EMR dashboard, where you can see if you have done some of the work earlier, then you would have some of the clusters terminated, and if you see some terminated with error, that's really okay. One thing I do notice is even after termination, it will not disappear, and maybe there's a reason, because if yours is not like mine that I have one cluster running, the fastest way to get the cluster up is not to recreate everything, but if you can select on one of the past setup that you have used. For example, if you see here, we have 3 instances set up, right, with Hadoop and also Spark, and it worked, right? Then the easier way is to select this past cluster and click on clone, and you go to the interface. Maybe I'll just show you a little bit, right, where you can see all this, and you don't have to do anything because the setting and so on are the same. That means if your setup from Lab5 was successful and correct, you can now just click clone, and here clone cluster, and you have a new cluster created. So in order to do that, right, I have created it, therefore I wouldn't click clone, but I would directly show you after cloning it, you would have been be able to see your cluster here with a primary node DNS address that you can also make use of. And as long as the status is waiting and all are ready, you can now keep the public DNS node ready, and now click on the Cloud Console. Okay, I need to start because I've just terminated my previous session. You probably will only see this if you start a new Cloud Console, and from here we can already begin. So since I've copied, if this is a clone, let's say setup, you likely will see things you have left behind. Like in our earlier example, we have left Voki in our shell, and also if you look in the SSH folder, we will also see Voki is inside, right? For all this detail, you would like to follow up with the instruction, right, from lab number 5. So what we'll do here is, let's just begin with SSH. So you should be familiar with this by now. We would like to use the private key, and we want to SSH into the domain that you have copied, right? So this is the one we have copied from here. Let me scroll up again. Hold on, this is the summary. So 200, 248 and 43, right? Looks correct. Then we can click enter here, and you can see we will be welcomed with the EMR message here. And if this is what you have done earlier, right, and you have SSH into this master node before this, you won't see any message here. But if you have only recreated this cluster, you will see something different, that it asks you about the accepting the new key and so on. You just put yes, and then you'll be welcomed with the same screen. So what we need to do here is to copy the commands from the lab sheet. So first is to run this, and in order to check, you might want to take a look at temp. Okay, maybe I need another slash. Now you can see new file has been downloaded, and for those who are curious, you could even take a look at this file, right, so that you have okay, let me use this command just to show you. Tail and you see the final lines, right, of this file you have just downloaded. So the next step, we will want to upload the file into our Hadoop. So you can copy the rest of the command here. Well, I don't encourage you to copy all 3 lines at one go, but if you want to do so, it's also okay. First, you create a new directory called Lab6 in the Hadoop cluster under user Hadoop Lab6, and then you would like to upload the file from TMP, that's on your master node, to Hadoop Lab6 in HCFS, and also you want to list down and see the content. So let's run these 3 lines. Okay, looks like it's okay. Then I think now you are ready to run the command. So let's go into the Spark console, right? Take a while, and now you can go to part 1 and start going through all the commands. So while I will copy and paste, you can see that's the first command. It will read the file from the Hadoop cluster and also print the schema. If you look at the lab sheet, in every part there will be questions listed, and after every time you finish, let's say, the commands provided to you, right, please take some time to understand first the command, what does it mean and what does it really do. Secondly, you also want to look at the question and see how you can find out the answers. But the rest I will go through rather quickly without going through the commands, because I think those are things you can find out. Okay, so you can copy and paste the command. You can let Google show you what the command does, or you can copy and paste the code and also put it into your favorite chatbot and then ask for explanation. And finally, what I would definitely want you to try out after you completed the whole lab is to also make changes to these commands and see whether you can modify the behavior. You can look for other information in this data set so that you can now carry out interactive data review and understanding, that I hope with this you get more familiar and also, you know, more confident with how you can use this. So this is part 2.1, where we want to select and filter the data, and you can see that is the outcome, right, of the filtered data that has 29,000 over lines. 2.2, you'll be looking at how you can carry out group by and aggregate. So again, you can run this command and then do a AGG show to see the content. And similarly, you can also do a join. That's where you can see this is the join command. You have a lookup and then you do a df join. Alright, so you can see it runs pretty fast, and if you want to try out, you can even do a window analytics, right? That will be the next command. Okay, with the window partition, and then you run the next command. At this point, you would have received some answers or output, and you can also examine the output, relook into the command, get help from the chatbot, and try to answer question 1 to question 6. Feel free to take a pause here after part 2 and modify the command, the parameters, and rerun some of these exercises to see whether you get different results that help you to understand the dataset better. Feel free to pause this video and do this exploration, and when you're ready, you can resume, and we will now work on part 3. So with part 3, we'll be moving to Spark SQL. So you can see now, even though it's a PySpark command, but you are going to use SQL, right? You can see here it's Spark SQL, and then SQL command that you would be able to interpret. And what happens is you will run the request using Sparkle. Okay, you can see now it's being executed, and you will get the result that you can find the answer for question number 7. Similarly, here you should be able to pause the video and also spend some time modify the SQL command and see whether you can manipulate and view different parts of the dataset using SQL. When you're ready, then you can resume this video and continue with part 4. At part 4, you now try to use this command called aggregate.explain. What does it do? You'll be presented every single steps that have carry out since we started, and you can see all these are the commands, the steps. And I hope here when you examine, you should be able to see in every stage, right, what has happened, what is the output, and you can now see all this detail being mentioned here. And with that, you can try to answer question number 8 and 9 before we go to the last part, part 5 of this exercise. When you're ready, we can continue with part 5. Yeah, feel free to pause or rewind to the previous parts, and that may help you to practice and also review and repeat some of the commands. So the last thing we want to do is to output the data. So you can see here we want to write, and the format that we will use will be Parquet. And here, very interestingly, we can even overwrite. If you remember using MapReduce earlier, we are not supposed to overwrite the produced outcome, but here with Spark, you can actually update your data. So if you run this, okay, it takes some time, but the results will be printed, output or save, right, in this folder AGG output. So in order to see it, we can exit from this shell, right, the PySpark shell, and what do you do is to press Ctrl and D is where you will exit to the normal Linux shell. And in order to now check the file, you can do the Hadoop file command, right, -ls with the right folder that you can see from the earlier command, right? If you check the content, you should be able to see there's a success file and also this whole thing, part 0000, but with the format of Parquet. So at this point, we could already end the lab, but if you leave this moment, and anytime when you come back, you want to resume working on the output of the data, but whatever is saved here, if you remember, the cluster, if you do not use it for extended time, Hadoop EMR AWS EMR will automatically terminate your cluster. And that also means this data will be lost. So one thing you have learned earlier is we do have another technique to store your data, right? Using the cloud, which is to store it in AWS S3. So in this section, I want you to first follow 5.2, the first command, which is AWS S3 LS, where you get this as your bucket ID. So all I want you to do here is to copy this bucket ID, and we're going to do it slightly differently from previous lab. I want you to create this thing called bucket equals and put the bucket ID inside, so that now this value is being stored in the environment. And the benefit is, if you copy the next command, you see instead of typing and modifying here, we can put it as a variable where $curly bracket bucket would mean it will take this value from the environment and it will automatically know what to do. So you can see it tries to copy, and even here, does it not look familiar? You're running actually MapReduce to now copy this file and transfer it over to S3. So what happened here is Hadoop MapReduce will be executed and the file will now be transferred over to S3. How do you know if this is successful? Step number 3 in 5.2 would have given you this command where you can now query and see, right? And now I'm going to show you that there is this file, right, in the S3, okay? And yours may look slightly different because I have done it once. So you can see one of the file is actually now stored in, right, the AGG output. I kind of maybe do it double. That's why now you see that, you know, there's twice of the AGG output. Okay, technically if you do it only once, you should only get one of them. Yeah, so I think this part we can see slightly different, but on the other hand, your file has already been duplicated, right, to the S3. I assume you will only see this as your file. I somehow have a mistake that I've done it twice, so you can see there are two AGG output. So I can probably safely say this tree line should not have existed, but it's there, you know, my mistake. But yours should see a success file and also this part, and that's very good. That means you have already a file saved in S3, so even if your cluster is terminated, you still will be able to access this file later time with another EMR cluster that you clone for next usage, but you can then access maybe through Spark on S3 to work on this output file. So that's actually everything I would like to run through briefly, giving you a live demo here. But in actual fact, when you work on this exercise, you should take time, review the code, and also review the output, answer questions stated in the lab sheet, and at the same time make changes, right, to the code, and also see how the output may look differently. Take down those notes in order to help you to understand. And I often mention in the class today, your best friend, you know, is also your favorite chatbot, right, that can allow you to post questions or even error messages to ask if there is any problem or things you are unclear. Copy and paste things from this window and put into a chatbot and make a query and ask what happened here, right? And I believe that you also get some immediate answers that can help you to understand what has happened. And also you can ask for suggestion, how can you still work with the data so that you can explore and practice how to use PySpark on EMR. So with this, I hope you will be able to learn again and get familiarized with AWS EMR using PySpark. And I wish you all the best, have fun learning, and I'll see you in the next lab, in the next video. Thank you and bye bye.